let's get back to the list, though.
Yeah.
The Rubio one, I think he'd be fantastic. That being said, I can't get over the Florida issue. Okay. Right. So it's easy. You resign and then you say, what? I go where? Because the one thing that no one has explained to me, and there's options. Where do you go? Rubio would have to become not just a resident, but a voter somewhere quick, right?
Well, he doesn't have to do it till after they win, as I understand the law, right? Doesn't have to happen till the day the Electoral College meets. And if he's on the ticket, they'll have a plan, which is they'll find a state where it's easy to establish residency, where he can buy whatever property he needs to buy and just say, I now live here. Could be Maryland or Virginia if their residency laws are accommodating. I haven't looked into that yet. If he's going to be vice president, he probably wants to move his kids to Florida, to Maryland or Virginia or DC and put them in school there. So I don't think they claim there's a secret plan. They've told me that for a while. The Rubio people say, yes, there's a secret plan. So I don't see that as a barrier anymore, as long as he's willing to move. And again, if he's vice president elect, I think I'll move.
It's fascinating. The insight is so helpful, because I had assumed that he would have to, when he got on the ballot, have had residency somewhere. But what you're saying is no, it's just when he's sworn in, because
not when he's sworn in, when the electors meet.
Right, which is fine, because you've got now up till January, right?
The electors meet in December.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks. See, this is why you're so good. And I'm actually a former elector. I should know this. But that's interesting. Okay, so he's got a lot more time than I had initially assumed. That does help this. And from your reporting, is this something that, Rubio's team is on board? They're like, I get it. I have to resign, and I do that.
Well, again, he doesn't have to until they win. And if they don't win, he doesn't have to move.
Oh, so he can stay. He can literally say, I'll be a senator. My plan will be that in November, if that wins, I just have to find a state within 30 days I can be a resident of.
Yeah. It's really not that big a barrier.
Okay. See, this is, you just took
That's my understanding of the law. I'm not a lawyer, but I've looked into it.
No, but that takes the report. That makes it a lot easier, as you've said.
What's a lot less risky. Not risky at all, really. What's in the Constitution is that members of the Electoral College cannot vote for one person from the same state, the electors of that state. So really the only problem is you risk losing the electoral votes of Florida. The fact is, if Trump wins in a landslide, if he wins all the toss-up states and then say wins Minnesota, etc., the buffer might be big enough that Rubio could still get to 270 electoral votes without Florida. And he wouldn't have to move.
God, that would be fascinating. Then you only have to worry about it when you run for re-election. All right. Well, that's super.
No, then he wouldn't have because he's not going to run for re-election.
Oh, you're right. Wow. This is like solve.
A lot of solves.
And just as a side note, because Politico brought this up in their story today, they were like, well, the other issue is DeSantis. Like, they don't want DeSantis to name a replacement. And I'm like, I don't know that that's a big deal. I mean, DeSantis is policy-wise simpatico with Trump, so he's not going to pick some random.
He's not going to pick someone who's anti-MAGA or who isn't going to vote with the conference. No, I've heard that too. I think that's ridiculous. And again, if Trump's president-elect, which is the scenario we're talking about, I think Rubio will probably be inclined to check with Susie Wiles or somebody before she decides who to pick.
I was going to say, DeSantis gets the joke, and he's not going to screw this up after the last. So let me just round out that top three real quick. I've heard a lot of chatter about JD Vance, obviously very close to Don Jr. They sort of believe that he is real MAGA. He gets the essence and the ethos of the MAGA movement. That being said, where do you think he fits in that top three?
Well, all three of them do something else, which we haven't really hit explicitly, which is they send reassurances to the establishment. All three of them, more or less, send a signal to CEOs and, small town bankers, et cetera, that even though they're MAGA, they're conversant in traditional republicanism. JD Vance's interview with Ross Douthat of the New York Times, Ross Douthat, I recommend to anybody who wants to understand why he's attractive to Florida, to Mar-a-Lago. He was extremely articulate in taking up the case of Donald Trump and finessing some of the more complicated and controversial issues. I thought he didn't make any sense. I was not, just intuitively, I did not think he was would be high on the list, despite his friendship with Don Jr. And I wasn't hearing his name much. I'm now hearing from some people that he's the pick.
Oh yeah.
That this is what's happening. And I don't rule it out, particularly after reading that interview. My skepticism about him is the transition he made from 2016, saying Donald Trump might be America's Hitler, to going full MAGA. Now, Rubio made a transition. Burgum made a smaller transition. Lots of people in the party have done that. But I just didn't see him as necessarily solid enough. He's young. He doesn't have as much experience in the national stage as Rubio. But I think that he might be, if he's the pick, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. And what he brings is an appeal to the rural areas and the ex-urban areas, which could drive this Trump victory.
So I agree. I think it's weird because depending on the day, I think I can make a case for any of those three, but I agree that it's that top three. The rest of the list that Politico had is Elise Stefanik, Byron Donalds, Dr. Ben Carson, Tom Cotton from Arkansas, and Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina.
The only person on that list who I currently take seriously is Cotton. I think the rest of them are way down. They just don't bring nearly enough, and they're all risky. None of them, if you close your eyes and imagine Donald Trump watching any of the others debating Kamala Harris, you can just see Trump thinking, they're losing this, and that he just that's too big a risk.
Yeah, okay. You and I learned a lot, but I think we're simpatico on the picks.